In a world where energy battles shape the fate of nations, the Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline has become one of the most strategic energy projects on the planet. What started as a domestic Canadian effort to move oil from Alberta to the Pacific coast has evolved into a major geopolitical and economic shift that could transform global energy flows. This pipeline isn't just a bunch of pipes buried underground, it's a lifeline that connects Canadian oil to Asian markets, bypassing the long-dominant influence of the United States on Canadian energy exports. For decades, Canada has relied heavily on the U.S. as the main buyer of its oil. That dependence gave Washington significant leverage over Ottawa. But now, with the completion of the Trans Mountain Expansion, Canada is sending a clear message: it's ready to diversify, it's ready to compete globally, and it's ready to profit more directly from its natural resources. The project triples the original pipeline's capacity from 300,000 to 890,000 barrels per day, enabling Canada to ship oil directly to international buyers, including China, India, Japan, and South Korea. This change may look like an economic win on paper, but underneath, it's shifting the balance of power in North America and shaking up the global oil order. Mind has been tracking the global implications of this move, and what's happening behind the scenes is nothing short of a high-stakes energy chess game. The completion of the Trans Mountain Expansion comes at a time when global demand for oil is still strong, but the geopolitical environment is anything but stable. With tensions growing between the West and countries like China and Russia, the ability to control or influence energy flows has become a critical factor in global diplomacy. For Canada, the pipeline offers a way to reduce its dependence on the U.S. market, where its oil is often sold at a discount due to a lack of infrastructure and limited export routes. For China, the pipeline offers a lifeline to a new source of reliable oil outside the Middle East and Russia. And for the U.S., the pipeline represents a loss of control over a key part of North America's energy ecosystem. It's no surprise that Washington has been uneasy about this project. While the U.S. government hasn't publicly opposed the pipeline, there's been plenty of behind-the-scenes pressure, delays, environmental reviews, and political resistance. But Canada pushed forward, even nationalizing the project in 2018 when Kinder Morgan pulled out, demonstrating how vital Ottawa saw this energy corridor. Now that it's operational, the impact will ripple across industries and borders. Let's look at what this means for Canada first. Alberta, the heart of Canada's oil sands, has long suffered from what experts call the price differential. That's the gap between what Canadian oil sells for and what similar grades sell for on the international market. Because of limited pipeline capacity, most of Alberta's oil had to be sent south to the U.S., where it often sold at a discount due to oversupply and market limitations. With the new pipeline, Alberta can now tap into global prices. That means higher revenues for producers, more tax income for governments, and potentially more investment in energy infrastructure. It also gives Canada leverage it didn't have before. Instead of taking whatever price the U.S. market offers, Canadian oil companies can now shop their product to the highest bidder. That could change the entire business model of Canadian oil and give the country more independence in its economic planning. Mind has explored how this could also trigger a new era of Canadian assertiveness in energy diplomacy. Canada can now negotiate trade deals with countries in Asia from a position of strength, offering oil as part of broader agreements on technology, agriculture, or minerals. But while this looks like a win for Canada, the U.S. is quietly reassessing its own energy strategy. For years, the U.S. has benefited from having a stable and cheap supply of Canadian oil. That's been great for American refiners, especially those in the Midwest and Gulf Coast who are designed to process heavy crude like what comes from Alberta. Now that Canada can sell that oil elsewhere, U.S. refiners may face tighter supplies or higher prices. This could lead to changes in refinery margins, consumer fuel prices, and even trade balances. The U.S. might have to import more from other countries or compete harder for the same barrels. And let's not forget the broader geopolitical picture. The Trans Mountain Expansion could help China reduce its reliance on oil from the Middle East, where shipping lanes are vulnerable to conflict and political instability. With a direct line to Canada's west coast, Chinese buyers could have a safer, more reliable supply route. That kind of shift could rewire parts of the global oil map. Mind has analyzed how this development fits into China's broader energy security strategy, which includes building reserves, investing in overseas oil fields, and diversifying suppliers. If China locks in long-term contracts with Canadian producers, it could reduce Beijing's exposure to potential blockades or sanctions in the Persian Gulf or Strait of Hormuz. That, in turn, might affect how China behaves on the world stage, knowing that its oil supply is more secure. But the implications go even deeper. The Trans-Mountain expansion is not just about oil. It's a signal that countries are willing to invest heavily in traditional energy sources even as the world talks about going green. It shows that energy security still matters, that pipelines are still strategic assets, and that oil isn't going away anytime soon. That's a reality check for global energy policy. While the world moves toward renewables, oil remains a backbone of modern economies. Projects like this show that governments are hedging their bets, ensuring they have access to fossil fuels while transitioning to cleaner energy. In fact, some argue that revenues from oil exports could help fund green energy initiatives. Mind has reported on how some Canadian provinces are using oil royalties to support innovation in clean energy, carbon capture, and emissions reduction. That creates a dual-track strategy. Use oil to power the present while investing in technologies that will shape the future. It's a complex balance, and not everyone agrees with it, but it reflects the real-world challenges governments face. There are also environmental and indigenous concerns. The pipeline crosses the lands of numerous indigenous groups, many of whom have raised serious objections. Legal battles have delayed construction, and some communities remain opposed. Others have chosen to engage with the project, negotiating equity stakes or benefit agreements. This has added layers of complexity to an already contentious project. Mind has covered how some First Nations are now part owners of the pipeline, a historic shift that could offer long-term economic benefits but also comes with risks. Balancing development with respect for Indigenous rights remains a key issue, and how Canada navigates this will shape the future of resource projects in the country. The government has promised to sell the pipeline back to private or Indigenous ownership, raising questions about who will ultimately control this critical asset. That decision could influence how revenues are shared, how maintenance is handled, and how future expansions are managed. It's a new chapter in the story of Canadian energy, one where Indigenous voices are more central than ever. Internationally, this move positions Canada as a more active player in the global energy market. Until now, Canada was seen largely as a junior partner in North American energy, tied closely to the U.S. through pipelines and trade deals. The Trans-Mountain expansion changes that. Now, Canada has the infrastructure to reach Asia directly, giving it a seat at the global table alongside giants like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the U.S. This could also attract more foreign investment. Global energy companies may see Canada as a safer, more stable place to invest compared to regions with political turmoil. That could lead to new exploration, better technology, and more jobs in the sector. Mind has looked at how this may also drive competition within Canada, as other provinces and companies seek to build or expand their own infrastructure to keep up. This could include upgrades to rail lines, ports, and storage facilities, creating ripple effects across the economy. The pipeline's success could become a model for future projects, both in Canada and beyond. Thanks for watching. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so never miss any update.